Soundstripe.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Truth Expedition, 3 days in a row. This is going to be a great show. You've tuned into the program where we dig for truth in this insane clown show of a world where the fact checkers lie and the government, the media propagandize you and me, the citizens of this amazing world. As always, joined by my good friend and co-host, Gunnar Ballstead. How's Gunnar today?
I'm stoked. Jake is one of my favorite human beings. He's a rock star in Minnesota libertarian politics, and we finally have him on our show. Yes.
Yeah, we've been meaning to do this for a while, but for those of you who don't know, we do have somewhat of a national audience, so and a lot of Minnesota folks. But Jake Duesenberg is the founder of an organization called Action for Liberty. Now, Action for Liberty is, as the name states, it's a liberty organization, liberty-oriented, preserving liberty for future generations. Jake is one of the most knowledgeable people I know when it comes to politics. I mean, you're going to find that out as you watch this. Jake is also the host of the show The Truth Hurts. Now, when I was running for state house, I relied on Jake. He really turned me around. I might have gotten sucked into the establishment. I mean, it's so easy to do. I really experienced it. Like, I could have been sucked in to that vacuum of manipulation, but thanks to Jake, I didn't. It came out. I didn't win, but I learned so much from Jake, and it's just really a pleasure. Thanks for being here, Jake.
Yeah, well, that makes it sound bad. You didn't win in the end, right? So you did actually win the endorsement.
I won
a
more
primary, so you won twice, and then it was a blue wave, and so Democrats were very successful winning Minnesota House seats in districts that they probably wouldn't have done in many other election cycles. So I think you did a very good job, and the nice thing is you stayed pure. Like, I trust you wholeheartedly in politics.
The previous election to mine, Biden won by 7. I lost by 7. I did get more votes than most of the other people on the GOP ticket, so there was that. I did what I could. It was not winnable. No GOP was going to win that seat. So,
right.
I mean, I
Especially
still have no
during
regrets.
COVID, I think the peak hysteria, the propaganda, you were up against a lot there. So, I mean, you did as well as you did, which is great.
Well, and the important thing is, win or lose, you didn't cave on your principles. And I think it is interesting because most people won't know what you meant by I could have gone one way or the other. But you listened to some of our team's advice, and we worked with you. And that's why I have a lot of respect and trust for you, Mark. Especially when I see these haters that are against Mark. I'm like, Mark's fought pretty hard in the trenches during COVID tyranny. And just in my way of looking at politics is, if people didn't get COVID right, I just don't really have a lot of time of day for them, because that was a major issue. You have to get COVID right. You got COVID so right that you were leading these massive rallies at the Minnesota Capitol. You left your job. I mean, you sacrificed great for that cause. And so, I think in many regards, even if you lost the general election in November, you helped with something that was really powerful, more powerful than one in particular Minnesota House election. So thank you for that, Mark.
My biggest regret is not primarying Housley and taking her, because I think I could have beat her. I could have got the endorsement for sure. I probably could have beat her in a primary if I really worked hard, and then I probably would have won that seat. Not that I could have gotten anything done, but that's my biggest regret. And I think you wanted me to, and I didn't.
Yeah.
Anyway, so for those of you who don't know Jake, so Jake is an Iraq war veteran. So we're going to talk about the Iran war. So Jake was in Iraq. I don't know a whole lot about it, so we're going to ask him about that. In what capacity were you in Iraq? Carrying a weapon? What type of weapon? Did you discharge a weapon? Where were you? Was it scary? Tell us a little bit about that.
I think my weapon was always an M4 in Iraq. So my Iraq deployment was towards the end of it. I got commissioned. So I was enlisted in the Army and then commissioned in 2005. My first deployment, if you don't count the U.S.-Mexican border, which was kind of an activation for a short period of time, My first deployment was actually Kosovo. And so I was there during their unilateral declaration of independence from Serbia. That was my platoon leader time. I was an infantry officer, so that was my platoon leader time. Then I volunteered to go to Iraq because I saw the writing on the wall. Plus, I was supportive of the war at that point. But I saw the writing on the wall. Like, if I don't actively take charge of my deployments, I am going to be caught off guard, just like I was in the Kosovo deployment. Because just to be honest with you, all of us infantry officers did not think about Kosovo at that time. We all wanted to go to Afghanistan or Iraq, and so I took you know, my own control and just volunteered to go on a deployment. One of my best friends, Jeff, he was also, we were in the same unit in Kosovo, so we both volunteered to go there. That was my time to not to lead soldiers directly. I was actually a staff officer in operations cell at a division headquarters in Basra, Iraq. So I actually got to see things from a higher level than I did, you know. So Kosovo ground level, basically a platoon, uh, a platoon leader, and then Iraq was at a very high level, even working with colonels and generals, which is really interesting. I met General Petraeus over there, so I was
Wow.
in a room in a briefing with him. So I got to see some pretty cool stuff. Also got to travel. You know, I got to spend a week in Baghdad, despite being in southern Iraq. Um, yeah, really, really cool stuff. And by the way, real close to Iran. And if you know southern Iraq, that's a Shia tribal area. So basically, like more aligned with Iranians down there than it would be like Baghdad, which was having trouble with Sunnis, a Sunni backlash against the Shia government.
Did you engage in any battles? Was there violence around you?
Well, not personally, that wasn't my role over there. But obviously we got rocketed all the time. Those rocket devices were, so on our deployment from Minnesota, we had three guys. I'm just trying to make sure I'm not forgetting it. Three guys that were killed by a rocket, one that was injured. I think that was only the direct um, deaths due to any kind of attacks, because I think there was some suicides, you know, and stuff like that. But so three that were killed one night. I think it was July 16th or July 17th. It was a very, very memorable night, I'll put it that way, for all of us, by rockets that were basically on timing devices that went off. They weren't very accurate. They just happened to land a quad area. So a lot of the bases are protected by these big barricades, either sandbags or sand traps, or what they call T-walls, these big concrete, like 12-foot tall, you know, structures. And they'd be put in quads. And so basically, if a rocket came in, it would only spread in that area and protect people maybe in the next quad over. These guys just happened to be in the quad that it dropped in. Then it was always said that those were Iranian rockets, and they probably were old armaments back then, but I've heard competing evidence of how much Iran's been a part of that. So maybe we'll get into that too, but that was my time in Iraq, and that was a year. Oh, I also have been to Qatar, by the way, but I'm not. I'm not paid by Qatar.
So when
And Kuwait, obviously. Anyone that went to Iraq went through Kuwait.
so what year was that?
09, and then I think I came back at the beginning of 2010.
And so you were pretty heavily influenced by the Ron Paul movement, and that's what kind of sparked you to start. I think you were kind of Tea Party at first, and then tell us a little bit how you started Action for Liberty, which I believe is the most powerful. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a state level organization, so it's not affecting federal politics. But I believe it's probably the strongest, from what I've heard and been able to find, organization in the country as far as affecting state level politics. So how did you get involved? What sparked you to do that?
Well, so, you know, I was a National Guard officer, right? So you got to go back to that time frame. We were all pretty much commissioned and thought we would be going overseas. Um, but we had some of us had civilian jobs. A lot of my buddies didn't, because they're like, well, what's the point in having a job right now? Or didn't have a real career. I started a career. I started a career as a financial advisor. And so in '07, I think that's when I got my deployment orders to go to Kosovo. The it's right at the cusp of the Great Recession. And Ron Paul was um, very noteworthy when it came to economics. So from my perspective, I'm a total free market guy. And I had known a little bit about monetary policy, mostly from like the end of a financial advisor, like the manipulation of interest rates and how that impacts my clients, right? And the bond market. So he got me on that issue, and I started following him. And you got to remember, like Ron Paul's '08 campaign was heavily done on YouTube, right? So I was listening to him, and then at the same point, during that campaign, I get deployed to Kosovo. I'm overseas, and I just got to say, like, you get over there and you realize how bullshit the mission is, right? Um, it's not to take anything away from the people that I went over there with. We all signed up for patriotic reasons, but you get over there and you realize, well, this has nothing to do with America, right? And Kosovo, I guess, relatively safe, compared to Iraq. But there were some hostilities that were very worrisome to us while we were there. Um, Iraq, totally different. Like when you spend nights in a bunker because got incoming rockets, it's just like, what are we doing here? Like, and why are they rocketing the base right now? Because that was like it was happening constantly where we were at. And it's like, well, these are people that view us as people invading their homeland, right? Invading their tribal area. So you could understand that perspective. So the way to overcome that is, well, what's the mission we're there for? Is that to protect our own homeland? And it's just like, you really have to be so far gone to actually believe that. And so it just kind of it just became so obvious to me in that 3-year time frame of 2 deployments and the stuff in between, that we're really not there for anything that's protecting our liberty, protecting our homeland. It's really for what the politicians want. And by the way, the politicians, they don't usually have much at stake here. They're not the ones sending their children over there.
Yeah.
It's usually us poor saps, people that didn't come from wealthy families, that get deployed over there. Definitely people that really believe in America and patriotic reasons. I think the people in the military are great individuals. But you just got to be honest with yourself. You go, well, geez, this isn't for the right cause. Okay. And I always say, like, if there is the right cause, if we have a military coming across the Canadian border, for those that aren't from Minnesota, that's how we think. We don't think the Mexican border up here. But it's like, if they come across Canadian border, you don't need to enlist me in the military again. Like, I'll grab my own firearm and stand post. What are you talking about? But that's just not what we're doing. And Iran's clearly another example of that. In fact, I think Iran's even worse, is that it's clearly, in my opinion, for a different country, a country that's supposedly our great ally. But that just seems crazy to say that. Like, these are the people that are picking fights. And then and what do we have? 13 U.S. service members now dead and over 200 injured, and other things that have happened to our bases and everything overseas. Is like, this is insane, and we're doing this for another country, and we shouldn't be doing that.
Jake, what made you enlist? Was it something that you wanted to do right away after high school? Did 9/11 prompt you to do that? What made you enlist?
Well, I guess it'd be two things. Honestly, I didn't grow up with like a wealthy family, so how was I going to pay for college? I knew I was going to go to college, so how was I going to pay for that? And somebody had told me about their time in the army, and there's enlistment bonus, and they pay for your college or reimburse you for it. I was like, wow, right? So that was it. And then part of it is, I was an athlete, football, basketball, and I guess I was an adrenaline junkie, and an outdoorsman. So I was comfortable with firearms. So I guess there was that thrill of it. And then, of course, I graduated high school from Onalaska High School down by La Crosse. And the first thing I do is I get on a bus, go to MEPS, go fly down to Fort Benning, Georgia, and spend 9 weeks or whatever in basic training. And they pretty much indoctrinate you. I want to be an airborne ranger after that. And then I'm going to college. 9/11 happens. then I remember the Iraq War starts out, and I was a proponent of it, but I'm just a dumb, 19, 20-year-old at that time. And then I noticed I had some leadership skills in college. So then I enrolled into ROTC. And because I was enlisted, I got to skip the first 2 years. So then I became a cadet at the U of M. So I'd commute between the two schools 3 times a week, 4:30 in the morning, and got my commission through ROTC at the U of M. So I was I was a red-blooded American. This is exactly what you want. Send your best, overseas. And I went infantry. I got to choose my branch as an officer, and I went infantry again. It's the only way I could see it happening. And of course, when you choose infantry, you're not running away from the battle. You want to go, right? So they call it IOBC. I think that's still what they do, but it's Infantry Officer Basic Course, which was also down at Fort Benning, Georgia. I think they renamed it to some stupid thing because the wokeness of Confederate generals, but it was Fort Benning at the time. And IOBC, the cadre were pretty much all 101st guys that were in the initial push to Iraq. So here I am, the new lieutenant class, and the captains and some of the NCOs that are training us are the guys that literally got back from the initial invasion of Iraq. I mean, could I get better training than that, right? And that was my introduction into the officer corps in terms of the Army, which is way different, experience than when I was enlisted. Just way different. So
that answers that. I want to go back, we're going to get into the meat now. I want to go back to late October, early November 2023. I was on The Truth Hurts. And I think in September of 2023, August of 2023, you and I, Jake, probably thought the same. This concept of Israel having some power over us, I'd heard in the periphery things, conspiracy theories, just wasn't in my, the front of my mind. I met Gunner. He kind of filled me in on what was going on. And then I was on your show. I happened to be on the state executive committee for the GOP in Minnesota, MNGOP. And I made some comments on your show that Israel had too much power over our politicians and, that AIPAC's funding us. And I think I brought up, that 10-7 might have been a false flag. I made some comments that turned out to be true. But the Republican Jewish Coalition, I think I was even in a couple small newspapers that I was anti-Semitic, and then they wanted me to, they wanted to censure me. And then on the MNGOP committee, they wanted to remove me and make me apologize, all these things, which I never did. But where are you now with that? Because I think, again,
was I different than you at that point?
Well, I don't know. I think so. I mean, maybe you weren't willing to say it then. I mean, because again, I think I was in the dark a month earlier. And then to say those things and be so attacked, it was like, but now you can say those things.
Well, you're still considered anti-Semitic, and there's this propaganda war against people that speak out. But I mean, it's just so obvious here. I think Benjamin Netanyahu's been to the White House 7 times or something since Trump's been president. Just no one's even close to that in terms of foreign leaders. Marco Rubio said that we went in because we wanted to preempt Israel's attack, which was for sure going to happen against Iran. And they feared that there'd be retaliation against us, so that's why we acted. And then, of course, I tried to correct that one because he seemed to be speaking the truth. But even if you don't believe that was the truth, I mean, the 12-day war was pretty obvious last summer. I mean, that was started by Iran. I mean, started by Israel. No one's disputing that, right? And so we got in. We were kind of towards the middle or tail end of it with the bombing of Fordo, and it's like, what was that? That was obviously brought in by Israel. So, and we obviously give Israel money, and obviously AIPAC, which does the bidding, lobbying in America for the Israeli government, funds pretty much all these campaigns. If you go to the AIPAC's website, you see the top 3 of the Democrats and the top 3 of the Republicans in the United States Congress, Tom Emmer and all the whoever they got on their side, the Democrats. It's like obviously these people are running the show in our political system. And then, of course, when people want to call this out, then they start these campaigns. And this is pretty well disclosed at this point that they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars with an ad campaign. And you see these commercials, but it's an ad campaign to try to steer people's attention back towards, being pro-Israel. They're losing. They're obviously going to lose this thing because the boomers will pass on in the next 20 years, and the younger generations don't buy their bullshit. So yeah, I remember that event. I totally forgot about that, Mark. It was pretty laughable to me, but I don't think we were different viewpoints at that point. It just,
well, maybe
there
not.
was no reason to come after me because I wasn't on the state exec
I
committee.
think the difference was, I think that Jake, you were a little more like, this is plausible, but I'm not, I don't know if I want to go out on that branch just yet.
Well, that sounds
Whereas,
right. Mark goes down a
right.
lot more branches than
Which
me,
I think
that's
it
for
was
sure.
safe. I think it was a safe, position at the time. But now I think we're at the point where we can all smell smoke, and we need to find this fire and, assist in safely putting it out. And so that's where I think all of this dialogue, discourse in mainstream politics and media at this time, I think, is really turning the corner there. And people are starting to reject the Ted Cruz's labeling Tucker Carlson as the greatest threat to America, this evil demagogue. We don't buy that anymore. And so I think that we really are turning the corner here. But is it too late? Seems like we're full steam ahead in Iran. Let's chat about that for a second.
Well,
because
what's interesting is the Tucker Carlsons are definitely more influential to the masses, especially younger masses, and
Right.
yet the old school types are clearly in control of our foreign policy. So,
right.
and by the way, that foreign policy is going to indebt the future generations.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is the thing that pisses me off in politics the most is, don't touch our Social Security. We've made promises. I'm like, well, then you're screwing over your grandchildren. Every war that you think is so important, you're screwing over your grandchildren. That's all we're paying for. We're $39 trillion in the hole. We're adding, we're at about $1.7 trillion projected for this year. We've already spent $1 trillion in this fiscal year, which is insane. And now they want another $200 billion for this war of choice, right? So,
Right.
yeah, congratulations. Your grandchildren are going to be poor. And by the way, I'm sorry, I'm going to get really fired up. And that's kind of why I wanted to do the show with you guys is, if you think about it, I had Royce White on my show yesterday, and I was like, well, what is Trump doing well? And he talks about the border. I'm like, good. Border correct. Yes, Trump did very well on the border. And he named one other thing I can't remember what it was, and then he said the economy. And I go, wait, how can you say that? Like, I don't give a shit. By the way, the stock market might have been doing well before this Iran
It's not
campaign.
going to do well for long.
But how do you talk to the average guy and say, well, the stock market's doing well? Think about these mid 20, 30-year-olds right now. And Royce is, I think, 34. So it was interesting to have him on. It's like, okay, because we're all much older than that, right? Think about this. You're in your like young 30s, right? And the American dream is to get married, have children, and own a home. Kids, people that age aren't getting married. You know this, right? Like they're not getting married. Do you know how expensive weddings are? People are opting out of weddings, right? They're definitely not keeping up with the replacement rate with children. Okay. I have 3 children. That's like, how many do you have now, Gunnar? You keep adding more. But
I was just gonna say, yeah, we're between the 3 of us, we've got 10 children, 10 boys.
good. We just got
So the
to
future is
the
looking
rest.
bright. We're doing our part.
Well, yeah, and they're not going to have children. They're not replacing it, and when they do, they have much older. And then you find out that the average age for first-time homebuyers is 40 years old. 40 years old, like that's literally the American dream going away. And do you think it's going to get better or worse? Well, it's obviously going to get worse because the policies that they're putting in right now are so costly. The government consumes so much that it's actually consuming so much that they can't even pay for it in direct taxation. So they print money, inflate the currency basically, which devalues your dollars in order to pay for it. Well, those devalued dollars are hurting the people at the beginning of the economic ladder, the younger people. And so this is a huge travesty. And so Good job, guys. You're really winning this, Ted Cruz. I mean, that's our future in America. By the way, Ted Cruz will be just fine. He'll be fine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they all are.
Barron Trump will be just fine.
So when you look at the propaganda that we faced during 9/11, after 9/11, during COVID, there's a signature, there's a blueprint of this type of propaganda. Trump campaigned on no forever wars, and now we're just full steam ahead. What explains this fracturing in MAGA, where folks who voted for Trump to not start a war are now, beating the war drum despite this obvious signature of propaganda? What's going on there?
Well, I mean, obvious to us, but apparently not obvious to the masses, right?
We're trying.
Yeah. Well, but MAGA is 100% behind Trump, right?
What's left
I
of
don't
it?
even know how anyone could quote that. That's so ridiculous, that poll. Well, there is a cult of personality here, okay? And Mark obviously interacts with these people to his dismay all the time on Facebook. Mark, you need to lay off it so much. But I don't post even close as much as Mark and interact, and you could see the hate coming after me. Like I'm getting accused of being a Democrat. Like, what are you talking about?
You got
My
TDS.
patriotism's been questioned. My my service, this country has been questioned by people. Like, that's just like, you're a puke. Like, what are you talking about? Like, especially when they haven't even served. So I don't know. It's a cult of personality, and that happens. But Trump is such a huge personality, so they he brings them amongst himself. And on the opposite side, you have TDS, and those are people that can't possibly see objectively, so they always think Trump's wrong, and that's an affliction on the left, and the never Trumpers on the right, or if they're really on the right. But the masses, I think, are at least looking at this in a different way. And in my position, being somebody that's very vocal on the right, at least in Minnesota, I get to interact with people all the time. Okay, Donors Action for Liberty supporters, people in the trenches, activists. And I would say there are a lot of people that see that this thing's not going so well. And when I say this thing, like the MAGA, the promises, and all that kind of stuff, and I think they'll probably learn more and more every day about this war not going so well. I just saw Nancy Mace, Representative Nancy Mace, talking about she stormed out of a armed force, or what is it, the House Armed Forces Committee hearing, or maybe it was behind the
It was like some closed door meeting.
yeah,
right?
closed door, yeah. And saying that like they're selling a war that we weren't sold to the American people, and so she's upset. Also talking about like, I am against troops on the ground, and of course we now know that the 82nd Airborne has actually got marching orders, right? So and then we know about 2 Marine Expeditionary units going overseas. So either it's a complete bluff by Trump to force the hand, or they're about to put boots on the ground over there. And which I think the popularity will go down even more. But I mean, it was going down already. Trump lost me on the Epstein files and selling a omnibus bill that increased our debt, and then called it a big beautiful bill. He lost me on that stuff. There are a lot of people I know that still support Trump. That was an interesting thing about Royce on my show yesterday. He's still, as he put it, 100% supportive of Donald Trump, even though he disagrees with Trump on the Iran war. I can't say I'm that way, but I'm very open-minded to listen to people that can still support Trump in that regard. There is a idea that possibly Trump isn't in control. The reason I give that theory some credibility is they are so terrible at selling this thing. Like, literally, it's so pathetic. The misstatements and the hypocrisy, it's like it's almost as if they don't care because it's not their policy. But if you go down that road, then it's really scary, because if it's not Trump's policy, then whose policy is it? Who's really in charge? And we just got over a presidency where we know the guy who was supposedly president wasn't in charge. So what if Donald Trump's not in charge? So I don't know if that's true or not, but boy, this is really a difference from his campaign promise, something that really got me interested in Donald Trump, right? Because I was never a Trump person per se, but I would consider myself part of the MAGA coalition. I voted for the guy in November. I was very hopeful on his presidency, especially on this issue.
All three of us voted for him. I had some hope. But to tell you the truth, even before 10-7, Gunnar, when we first talked, told me exactly what was going to happen. And if Gunnar's right about what's going to happen coming up, we should all be scared to death.
I don't want to
What's
be
that?
right. Yeah.
What's
I don't
that?
want to be right.
What do you think's
Well,
gonna
I
happen?
think, yeah, I mean, I don't think that we have a secular foreign policy. We have an Abrahamic foreign policy. And I don't think that we're at the stage now where it's all or nothing, I think. And so the stakes are nuclear war with a green light from biblical text and according to, their interpretation of it.
Yeah,
So
'cause
I think
before
that's
even
where
10-7, I mean, 10-7 hadn't happened. So like this whole Israel thing was like nothing. It wasn't in the news. And Gunnar had
right.
told me this, like, it's gonna escalate. Like we're gonna go to war with Iran. Literally said that before 10-7. And it's eerie.
Well, I mean, if you look too at the track record of the presidents in the United States, Nixon, Carter, Ford, George Bush Sr. all said that the Israeli lobby had too much control over American politics. And so I think that that grasp has only been strengthened and solidified through these different operations, Epstein, through financial entanglements, things like this. It's only going to get weirder and more dangerous as time progresses. And that's where I think we do need to alert people that there is smoke and there's a fire somewhere and we need to go find that and, like I said, safely put it out.
Okay, but you think we're not a secular government or secular policy, but I mean, I don't think of a lot of these people in charge as actually being some diehard, um, well, how do I put this? Because they're not Jews, right? Maybe
Well,
they're
evangelicals,
good.
they're
They used
along
to
for the
be
ride. I mean, if you look at
yeah, but they'd be Christian Zionists, right?
look at the United States, there's 20 to 30 million Zionists, right? 20 million of those are evangelicals. So the Ted Cruzes of the world, they don't need to be compromised by Epstein. They were compromised by their pastors growing up. And so they're hell bent on making sure that the state of Israel has anything and everything that they need to fulfill this biblical prophecy. So that's what I think is happening. And it
Well,
is
that's
not a
obviously Ted Cruz shows that that's a thing, but
right.
I don't know. I find it hard to believe that's
Mike
well.
Huckabee,
I guess Pete
Pence.
Hegseth has said
Look
it.
at all of them.
Yeah,
Pence,
Pete
Hegseth.
Hegseth
He's
said it.
hell bent on the third temple.
Wyckoff,
He's gone to Israel and said the same at the King David
Kushner.
Hotel, which was the site of the first
Right.
ever terrorist bombing.
Yeah, no,
When
I feel like when you study some of these world leaders, there are some fanatic, hardline religious people. You see this in the Islamic world, and they tend to be very thorough in those belief systems. And then you look at people like Pete Hegseth, and yes, he goes and speaks about the building of the temple, but the guy also is getting blackout drunk and hooking up with chicks all the time. I'm like, I don't think this guy's like a hardline Christian. You know what I'm saying? So that makes
for
it
sure, I
hard
mean,
for me
look
to
at
believe these
Trump
guys are.
as well. Like, I don't think, I mean,
Yeah,
Trump
Trump's not.
sells a
Well, I don't
Bible.
even think
He
Trump's a
sells a
Christian. I don't
No,
think Trump's a
exactly.
Christian.
No, he sells a Bible, but he'll
Yeah.
go and pray at Rabbi Schneerson's grave, who, according to Kushner and Ben Shapiro, is the Messiah. According to them, that he could be born again to be the Messiah. And
Well,
I've said
Trump
this
is clearly not Jewish either. He's just not a religious guy, and he never
Probably
really
not.
has.
But
right.
Ivanka's Jewish and Jared Kushner's Jewish. Wyckoff is Jewish. He's surrounded by Jewish people.
But how many of those Jewish people really are like practicing Jews? Like even
They're
Benjamin
Chabad
Netanyahu's.
Lubavitch. They're Chabad Lubavitch. So they're not like, they don't have the sideburns, curlies, and they're not always rocking around in their yarmulkes, but nonetheless, they're devout Chabad Lubavitch. And I mean, I think it's hard to peer into somebody's heart and say, what are you doing here and what have you. I don't want to take somebody's religion away from them if they, claim to be devout. I think we can all agree that Trump doesn't exercise the Christianity that we all grew up with. And so, but when
But he
we
doesn't
look
even
at the people,
profess to be a Christian, I don't think. So
well, I mean, he'll hold the Bible up and say, "Buy my Bible," but I don't know what that means. I mean, yeah, it's
yeah,
very
I mean, and
strange.
he has those bizarre preachers that come and bless him, and
Oh, that Paul
prayer.
White is insane.
Oh, it's totally insane.
They're all on board for the greater Israel endeavor. And so that's
Yeah,
where I
right.
think we don't have a Ron Paul secular foreign policy. You know, we have a foreign policy that's baked and rooted into Abrahamic eschatology, and so they're trying to see this carried out.
Well,
And
there's definitely influential forces that want to see it out, and then there's a bunch of evangelicals that are at our higher levels of government, like Ted Cruz, which is bizarre for me because, growing up as a, Christian, my dad's a Lutheran pastor. It's just such a bizarre way that they view the Bible. And I like how it's playing out right now because Lutherans are very much more in line with Catholics on this. And so it's really interesting to see a lot of these Catholics speaking up because it's so bizarre what some of these, I don't want to well, not all evangelicals think this way, so I don't want to make it sound that way, but it is really bizarre hearing some of their views, especially in Genesis. Was it 12? What is it, Ted Cruz? What chapter is that? Where in the Bible is that, Ted Cruz?
In Genesis.
yeah, there's
Did you
several
have a question?
mentions of that.
Were you trying to go to sorry. Were you trying to go to a question mark here? I saw you.
Well, no, I just
screen.
I put comments on the screen
Oh,
just
okay.
because I appreciate people watching and engaging. I think that, I mean, there was a question in the last one. You're like, what approaches work to encourage people to gain awareness and take responsibility? I don't know the answer to that. It's so hard because people are very indoctrinated and they're stuck in their ways. Like, we're kind of all in our own echo chambers, unfortunately. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Oh, well, it's a very hard road, but I think you'll appreciate this, Mark, because you see the arrows I take on Facebook. And I do that very purposely because Facebook is your boomer social media platform, right? The young people started banning Facebook years ago. And I feel like it's my duty to take those arrows so that there's a large voice on the right against this war. And so I can't do that alone. If you feel the way that I do, you need to speak up, right? Now, there's ways to do it that I think you can start turning the minds of some of the people out there. Some people you won't be able to change their mind, but that's politics. But just, approach it in a way, understanding that a lot of these people that are resisting are patriots. They do really want America to succeed. They love Donald Trump for the real patriotic reasons. So maybe approach it that way. It's I see the stupidity of some of these arguments, and it's easy to just bash them. But maybe I'm sympathetic because I was there 25 years ago as a dumb college student, holding up Bomb Saddam signs. And I just maybe get a lot more information from multiple sources than Fox News and Newsmax. So maybe there's a reason people are feeling that way. So you kind of have to voice things and bring that up from the right, because the left is so pathetic. They don't offer any solutions on anything in politics these days other than making sure maybe we don't forget about our poor and downtrodden in society. Otherwise, I don't know the utility of the left these days. They used to be anti-war consistently and pro-free speech, but they aren't anymore. And so it needs to come from the right, and also because the right is in charge of our federal government too, right? So we need voices on the right to speak up.
But
That's
I
all.
also think, the far left is obviously, they're nuts. But I also think there are a lot of moderates that aren't really paying attention that could be swayed. And I think we're missing an opportunity here, especially with the ICE thing, because I'm against a masked and militarized police force that comes in with 3,000 people and terrorizes neighborhoods. I'm all about getting rid of violent, illegal immigrants. I'm all for that. I love that our border's secure, but I think we might be and I don't know how you would take advantage of this opportunity, but I do think this would be the time to be like, hey, look at the government's doing this. They're doing this illegal war. Like, now look further. We need to shrink the government. Can you now agree with that? I think that's why, Gunnar and I might go to some of these No Kings rallies and try to, not that you can make any headway, but just to understand, but those are going to be your far, far left, I imagine. I don't know, but do you think we're missing an opportunity here to any degree?
No, I don't, because where do you put that? Because you're right, there's a frustration on the left too, right? Where do you harness that frustration? Well, it's not to go vote Republican, because we're obviously not in charge of the Republicans. They're doing things contrary to what we're saying. ICE is a great example.
Yeah.
I think we were all vocal against Metro Surge, which by everyone's estimation should have been obviously a massive disaster. And the left the left is going to win points on that, and those points will be an election because they're the resistance to it. And they would do the same thing, by the way. In fact, they did during COVID. So they'll do the same thing. So I don't know where we harness that and put it, towards. Like, it's
You're
not
right.
Libertarian Party. So until we actually have some place to put that energy, I mean, I guess you could go to Action for Liberty. There's an organization that looks and calls it out on both sides. But until you have like a political party that actually embraces these things, you don't have that place for the frustration. So that's why I decided to put my voice towards people on the right in the Republican ranks. Got to, Ron Paul was a place to harness that energy in 2012. People on the left there and joined him. Actually, that happened to Donald Trump. His 2024 coalition was with people on the left. Those people joined. I mean, geez, RFK Jr., or Kennedy joined his campaign. So obviously they're not going to do that now, right?
Yeah,
So,
I hadn't thought of that. We do have common ground, I think, but you're right. Like, what's the solution? Vote Republican? That doesn't work. You're right. But go ahead.
well, the opportunity will come in probably 2 years from now, because obviously we all see the writing on the wall here, don't we? Like, the midterms are going to be a slaughter for Republicans, and they deserve it. And so the Democrats will get in power, and then they'll screw things up, and then people will be looking for hope. And that's why, once again, start planting the seeds on the right, root out these neocons, and bring in this like humble foreign policy, pro-liberty side, and then maybe there's some place for those disenfranchised Democrats to go.
I do think that there are folks on the left that are starting to oppose the Iran war, and I get a little bit of hope from discussions like Tucker and Cenk Uygur, who very much are kind of the same pillars on the left and the right. I think that through COVID and through Iran and through all of these different trials that we've had, you see the same kind of pattern. You get the propaganda that hits, it begins to resonate. And then people begin to act on this. After 10/7, there was this discussion of, sexual assaults and beheaded babies. All of that is awful. But then it turns out that that was just manufactured propaganda. And then what you see in real time after a year or two is people begin to shy away from dropping all these bombs on Gaza or masking up. You still might have people on the left that are like, I believe in vaccines. Yeah, well, when was the last time you got your COVID booster? They haven't. So I think that there is this type of groundswell of resonating the truth, and that it is our duty here to continue to stand up and identify this propaganda and realize that these people are susceptible to it. And it's kind of like a tragedy, it resonates with them, and in a way that it doesn't resonate with us, thank goodness. So I'm upset at the apparatus that installs this propaganda, and not necessarily at the individual that, marches to that drum.
Well, and that's why it's good you guys do a show and I do a show, and we're just like small fish in the sea of new media, but it's so important. I mean, I see your
Right.
comment section. Like, I know you guys have fans. I'm a fan of yours. I try to watch as many shows as I can. We need truth tellers out there, and over time, I think we will bring more people to our movement. I wish there was just some formal way in terms of elections to get people on board and solve these things. And that was what so that's what MAGA was supposed to be. That's what the coalition was. And that's why maybe a lot of us are so upset, is because it's clearly not going that way. There's promise after promise, and then they taunt you. It's like, promises kept, hashtag promises kept. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? No, you're not. It's not. What are you talking? Where's the audit of the gold at Fort Knox? And where's those where are those tariff rebate checks, right?
Right.
And where's the Doge checks? And where is Doge, by the way?
We still have an income tax. There's so many things.
And why isn't the deficit cut in half? And why is the deficit growing, right? These are like, and it's amazing that people would fight you against it. It's like, these are objectively promises not kept. Thank God he kept the promise on the border. I mean, thank God on that one.
So, Jake, Mark is pulling me over to this anarcho-capitalist side, and I'm still very much like, I think we need some form of governance. So I'm kind of in the middle of both of you here. Pull me over to the statist side, Jake.
Well, let me just say this, though. I don't believe a voluntarist or anarcho-capitalist system can be implemented. I think
Right.
what it does, and Patrick Torgrimson pointed this out, is it's an extreme view that kind of can bring people to the right, to the liberty side, to move the Overton window. I don't believe it's really logical.
Right.
You can't have no
Well,
government.
Jake,
You can
I
have
mean,
a
what I'm
small
trying,
government.
Well,
you
I
got to white
reject
pill me
I
here,
reject
Jake.
the way you frame this whole question. How dare you, Gunner? The
Oh yeah,
statist
calling you a statist, huh?
I
No, but
hate the
seriously though,
state. I hate the state.
white
You want
pill
to
me
hold
here.
on? Let me tell you a story about the state today. Today, do you know what was being discussed on the Senate floor? I just have to preface this with my wife, who drives a 2020 Honda Pilot. Okay, now that's a nice damn car. Okay, and I bought that, worked hard, bought her a car. I did the ribbon thing for Christmas. It was awesome. It was used, by the way. It was 2023 or whatever. So she's got a 6-year-old vehicle, probably 7 years old, right? Because they usually put out the new models in 2019. So 7-year-old vehicle, and the tabs come in the mail. And you know what the tabs are? The $380.
Tax.
Tabs in Minnesota just went up. Now that is on top of everything else going up in our life, right? I don't need to tell your audience. You guys know, you see, and you're outraged by everything going up. But if there was some reprieve, how about the government of Minnesota just give us some reprieve, reduce our tabs or keep them the same? But no, what did they do? They grew them, right? And the Republicans are telling you this happened under the DFL trifecta. True. But you guys have been also part of the government for the last year, and I didn't see you guys holding up the whole session and forcing a government shutdown over not raising the tabs. So anyhow, tabs, big deal, and it's being reported in the media because everyone's getting the sticker shock right now. Do you know what the Senate was doing today in Minnesota? They're debating a bill, or actually a resolution, to allow kids on the Senate floor so that some people in the chamber can breastfeed. And by the way, it was a contentious debate, and there were amendments offered, but they were debating a resolution on allowing children on the Senate floor. I'm so happy that they're solving the problems of what's going on in their chamber. How about you stop messing our lives up? I am not a statist. So the beauty of anarcho-capitalism is it's so anti-state, right? I'm very obviously sympathetic to it. I see someone put 650 years on my old ass Volvo. I mean, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what we're seeing. I had a person come up. We ran the state fair booth. People kind of got to know us, the King Walls booth or the Dump Walls booth. And I had a guy way back in the day came up to me. He was some young punk, and he's like, "Yeah, man, I'm not with you guys. I'm an anarcho-socialist." I'm like, "Well, I've never heard of that. What's an anarcho-socialist?" He goes, "Yeah, we voluntarily have communes where we share the wealth." And I go, "Dude, so am I. I'm a freedom guy. That's freedom. The problem with socialism is there's not freedom. The government is the decider, right? So there's really nothing called anarcho-socialism. But if you want to do what you want in the freedom of your life and just take your resources and give them equally to all the people in your neighborhood, I have no problem with that. None whatsoever. Just don't let the state do it, right? Because they're not full of angels. So I don't know. I would say you're the statist here, Gunner. Aren't you a agent of the courts, or what do they call it?
Officer of the courts.
Officer of the courts. So you're an officer of
Yeah.
the courts, man. I'm not even an officer in the military anymore. You're the statist.
But no, for real though, white pill me here. Do you think that there is a chance that we can save our republic? Do you think that there's a chance that we can stop this madness, that we can defeat a media empire that propagandas us into oblivion, military industrial complex that just wages war after war? Is there a way for us to take our republic back?
Yeah, well, we will get it back. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to have some huge pain. There's that old adage like hard times create hard men create easy times create weak men create hard times, right?
Yep.
And so we're kind of that period where it's weak men, right?
Right.
We see that all the time. And so we got some hard times coming up. Obviously, we have some hard times. And it's if we had a lot of time, I could go into the financial thing. I think we will have a Great Depression. They'll probably end up calling it Great Depression 2 or the 2030 Great Depression, whatever. There's gonna be a Great Depression, right?
Yeah.
And then there's gonna be arguments on what kind of governance we have. Okay. And there's going to be a big push for socialism. I believe America has this rugged individualism, and I think that we can win that battle. But we're going to have to go through that period, right? And we're trying to like make that period go faster by racking more debt than we've ever racked up before, and then putting us in costly and nonsense wars. So apparently, we're really trying to get there quickly, but we're going to get there because it's a financial issue. And so I'm optimistic at that point that we can turn our country back into a republic, because a lot of us, and this is what keeps me active in politics, I'll be there for that event. Now, with that being said, it doesn't mean you coast right now. You still need to be involved in the political system, especially locally. But you better be a prepper. You better start prepping. Things are going to get bad. Like you are 100% right. We don't live in a republic. I mean, it's not a republic, right? Our foreign policy is captured by something that's way adverse to what the people want. This is the most unpopular war we've ever had that we're getting into, and we're getting into it. So clearly, the people are not in charge in this country.
I would like to bring up some monetary policy. Gunner's really good with this. Jake, I think you're, financial advisor. You understand this. There's this whole concept of end of the Fed. How would this work? And I believe we do need to end the Fed. But can the two of you kind of walk me through how that might work? What would our monetary policy? So the government would then handle the money, print the money. I mean, tell me.
They can't be trusted.
So how does this work?
Well, it's like I like my food. I want free range organic, right? So why don't we have that in interest rates and our system of money? You could have competing currencies, and you kind of do, because you have Bitcoin now, right? Or I
Gold,
should say
silver.
cryptocurrency. So you could have competing currencies. Obviously, the marketplace will determine what's the winner. People want stability in money. And it's already there, by the way. It's gold and silver, but gold in particular. There's a lot of stability in gold. And it's been money for 4,000 years. So we know it works. It's easily divisible. It's relatively an unchanged commodity because you have to dig it out of the earth. And that takes a while. And by the way, the amount of gold around this planet could only fill like 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools.
Mhm.
So there's not a ton of it. And so yeah, I would think gold's gonna win. I would think it'd have to have some crypto attributes. So you'd probably have like you'd see a system well, this is already happening, by the way. Okay. You would have a system where people take shares of gold, and then they have like some credit card or some digital wallet, right? So it's still tied to that currency, or tied to the element. So that's what you need, and the government doesn't have to partake in it. They probably will. They always do. Every world government does. They don't need to. I would advocate against it. I would say that the government could do it a lot more honestly, but we'll probably end up in the same place, many years down the road. That's just what governments do. Back in the day, back in the Roman times, they clipped coins. You know what that means? They would actually take content out of a coin, melt it down, and create more, so it lost its metal content. They're a lot more clever these days. A lot of the manipulation of our dollars is not even done with printing; it's just done digitally.
Right.
So
Yeah, debasement. So I think the way we would do it is we would have the smartest people in the room that are transparent and relatively disinterested, audit the books of the Fed, and then we would come up with a plan to migrate to a new system. The whole reason why we had a Fed in the first place was to get rid of shady dealings of individual banks where they were over leveraging the money that they had on the books. Ironically enough, the reserve ratio right now is zero. Zero. Banks don't have to hold any money on reserves and lend out additional monies. It's a scam. Most people don't really put this together, but when you look at cost of groceries and things like this, it's pretty obvious what's happening. So I think that's what we'd have to do is we'd have to migrate to a new system. We need to solve the volume issue, which is like, obviously if you're hoarding gold, then how can you spend money at shops? So you're always going to have to deal with that technology and market conundrum, but nonetheless, it needs to be done transparently and not behind the books of the Fed. So I'm okay with government regulation of banks, and I think that money creation should be privatized with regulation and with a transparent bookkeeping system.
Well,
If
I
we
wouldn't even say there
fine.
needs to be money creation. It's that it needs to be stored in something that can't expand much. Are you able to pull something up on here, Mark?
Yep.
Just
You can share
Google
too if you want.
Google M. I was showing this yesterday on my show. M1 money supply. It's St. Louis Fed. It's called the Fred system. You should be able to find the chart, and it shows the spike of what we would consider the money that's in circulation. You'll see it's really interesting how much it's spiked up in the last many years. There's many different ways to measure money. M1 is the one that's the most liquid assets or most liquid money in our economy. And the reason I bring that up is that matters the most for inflation, or I should say prices going up, because it takes two things for money. Not that.
Not that.
Just go out. Did you Google it? Just Google M1 right there. First one, M1 money supply. There you go. St. Louis Fed. That's the nice function of the Fed, is they do actually put out stats and they do research. So St. Louis Fed's a wealth of research. So there you go. That's the history of our liquid cash in our economy. It's measured in a couple things, checking deposits and stuff like that. Now you see that big spike in COVID. That's actually two different things. That was they changed the measurement. They had what did they add? They added savings deposits. Okay. But it also had to do with the big spike in the bailouts, essentially, right? They just created a ton of money. I mean, like $3 trillion overnight, and handed them out to people. That was their big solution. That was, and by the way, that was Trump. And I wrote about this, saying this is going to lead to prices going up. So they did this basically in a relatively short period of time. And you see, it was a huge spike, and then the Fed tried tightening the supply because we had runaway prices, and now they're starting to inflate it again. Well, you can't allow anyone to be able to do this, and that's what gold doesn't allow them to do. You can't just poof make more money, right? Because if you did, it's still going to be this is still tied to a physical asset, right? So even if you create paper money that's supposedly a part of a certain gold, the economy is going to know, or the market's going to know, that you just deteriorated the amount that share is worth, right? This would happen like in a stock, like if a stock is splitting, right? So a stock is a share of a company, and if they split it, well, each share now is less value. Let's say it's a 2-1 split. Each stock is half the price it was. Now you have two of them, right? In this case, it wouldn't be like you have two of them. They just created more out there, and now yours is worth less. So they couldn't cheat as much. And so that's the whole point, is we don't want them to cheat. But we haven't been on a gold standard since 1971 officially. So that's why they can cheat like this.
What do you got, Gunner?
You want to talk more about money? I love that.
I don't hear you.
I love monetary policy.
I don't hear.
By the way, there's another big problem here with monetary policy. The manipulation of interest rates also creates malinvestment. And so they've done that, right? And so and Trump is arguing to lower interest rates. He keeps wanting rates to be lower, but that creates a malinvestment. It's a signal in the economy. It's price setting, because that's what interest rates are. They're the price of money. And so that's going to have ramifications. If you want to know more about that, study the Austrian business cycle. It's the manipulation of interest rates and how that creates the business cycle.
Can't hear you, Gunner.
Yeah, Gunner, you're muted.
Listen to Tucker and Richard Warner. That's a fantastic discussion. Richard Warner discusses how the monetary, if you are going to go into some deficit spending or something like this, it has to be for public works that begin to pay themselves off over time. Bridges, roads, things like this. If you do that, you can stimulate an economy and actually have it grow. But to Jake's point, it's right now what we're doing is creating perverse incentives. The beauty about gold, of course, is that it is not created here on Earth. It's created through supernovas. So anytime a star explodes, it deposits these heavier metals onto the earth, so that we don't have an infinite amount of gold. We have to, try to excavate it from the earth. So it is the ultimate currency and money.
Right.
Um, okay, so we're at about an hour, but I do want to ask you this. Okay, Minnesota is crazy. I have friends around the country, around the world, that reach out anytime something happens, and it always seems to be in Minnesota, whether it's the Somali fraud, the murder of Melissa Hortman, this ICE stuff. I mean, it just kind of continues to go
Floyd.
on. George Floyd, all of these things are coming to a head right here in Minnesota. So, in terms of, the ability for us to take back our government, we have the perfect experiment lab right here in the Twin Cities. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's always Minnesota? And how can we engage in Minnesota politics to begin to shape national politics?
Minnesota is a red state that's been dominated by one political party on the opposite side of what it is, and that's why is the way it is. Every state has a same problem that Minnesota has in terms of the major metro area is very blue, right? So I think pretty much every metropolitan area that's 100,000 or over in terms of population votes Democrat. Like let's just say presidential elections. I'm guessing what the metric is. So, but why is Minnesota? Because everyone that leaves the Twin Cities knows how red the state is. Why is it just so dominated with Democrats? And it is that way because of infrastructure on the Democrat side, both with money but also people. And this isn't something that was just internal, but there are a lot of people, some movers and shakers in Minnesota that have done this over the last 30, 40 years. But they're outside. There's a book actually written about it. It's called Blueprint. It happened in Colorado, how these leftists took over Colorado. They did the same thing in Minnesota. They did the same thing. So it was so obvious that they actually called it. You'll appreciate this. The One of the organizations they started up in Colorado was the Alliance for a Better Colorado. I mean, they weren't even like secret about that. That is the major Democrat spending in Minnesota, the Alliance for a Better Minnesota. They like take the same name and just substitute the state. So that's why it's so unique around the country is that we are a red state that is dominated by one political party. And and I guess you're seeing like the forefront of politics, that collision always happening in Minnesota. Oh, I'm sorry. One other reason too is also we're like middle America, right? Because the coasts are very different and unique, but we're right smack dab in the middle. So Colorado's similar to what we got, but we're far more dominated by the Democrats in Colorado.
I got one more question. I know we're at an hour, but this is important because we do have a huge medical freedom type audience, and this SF 3439 going through Minnesota right now will mandate the MMR vaccine for all children over 15 months, whether you're homeschooled or not, private school, public school. It's insanity. We learned nothing through COVID. Apparently, so just walk me through how this will work. I believe it went through the Health Human Services Committee or one of those committees. It made it through. I believe now it goes through the Education Committee for the Senate. If it makes it through there, then it goes to the floor of the Senate for a vote. Is that correct?
Well, I haven't tracked this thing. That's Jesse's role at Action for Liberty. But they'll go through all the relevant committees and then they'll try to put it on the floor for a vote. So I don't know where they are at that stage, but that sounds right because I know it passed its first committee and then the Education Committee would make sense to me.
Yeah.
And then it's got a tough road in the House. So hopefully it's going to die a death.
One rhino is all it takes.
Well, that's also assuming all the leftists are on board. Remember, the anti-vaccine crowd wasn't initially on the right.
Right.
That was another thing, as we were mentioning, the MAGA coalition brought a lot of those people over to Trump's side. RFK being one of the most notable names of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, just like gun control, like I think people have to understand Minnesota, once again, unique thing. It's a red state, but with predominant Democrat control. They are trying to pass, Tim Walz is trying to pass some of the most radical gun legislation in the United States. They not only want to ban AR-15s, they've got this provision in the bill that allows you to keep an AR-15 if you're grandfathered in, but you have to register it with the government, and the government then can come in and make sure you are storing it correctly. So the government can, I mean, like, we're not just talking about the Second Amendment, we're talking about Fourth Amendment violations on that bill. They also have a bill, you can't have more than 10 round magazines. Thank you, government. Let me know what I can defend my family with, right? They want to get rid of the pre-exemption law in Minnesota, where you basically, the state and feds are the only ones that can write gun laws in the state of Minnesota. The cities can't do that. Counties and local municipalities can't. They want safe storage where people can't have a loaded firearm in their house, right? There's already negligence. If you have children, you have to be a responsible gun owner, but they're saying like anyone can't. So they have a lot of those things. And once again, it's going to have a tough chance of passing, but you're right. It could be one rhino that goes bad, or maybe the Democrats are all aligned against it. So that's the concern we have. And so we'll fight against all those bad
So
policies.
you think right now it's not likely to pass?
Well, I think the Senate's where it's getting its traction, and that's
One seat.
34, 33 Democrats.
Yeah, so maybe it passes the Senate, but I mean, if you had to say now, would you say not likely, less than 50% chance it passes?
Yeah, it's certainly, would say it's less than 50, but I don't track that. I haven't tracked that one as much. It's a good question. Um, yeah, that's a really good question. I'll get back to you on that. Maybe for a future show, you can give an update on it.
Yeah. So if I think we're about out of time. We'll have you back on, Jake. There's a lot more we could talk about, but I want to just plug the show. So Jake is, I mean, understands, as you just learned here, understands the political apparatus better as well as anyone I know. His show, The Truth Hurts, all you got to do is go to Rumble and search The Truth Hurts. It pops up. It is fantastic.
Go to YouTube.
YouTube every
Much
Tuesday,
better.
Thursday.
Yeah, go to YouTube. I don't know how much I'm putting into Rumble these days.
Yeah,
right.
I hear you.
YouTube's playing nice right now. So if you just hit Truth Hurts News, if you just search that, you'll find it. If you just type in Truth Hurts, a Lizzo show or a song pops up. So I'm not that. I'm not the Lizzo song.
But yeah, it is a great, especially if you're in Minnesota. But even if you're not, you're going to learn a lot about how the apparatus works, because the Minnesota government works similar to, I mean, we have an endorsing process, but that's neither here nor there. All states are similar in how they work, and you're going to learn a ton. It is one of the best shows out there. I really do mean that, Jake.
Well, thanks, Mark.
It's you have a great show. You interview people well. You always bring really valid information to the table. You also do conceal and carry classes. Tell us a little bit about that and where people can find that.
Yeah, so I do. So Minnesota has a permit to carry requirement. So does Wisconsin, where you're at now, but it's much nicer there. And so people that get them only have a permit for 5 years, and they have to retake the class. So I teach those class. It's just a basic firearms class, something that I believe in wholeheartedly, training people to protect themselves. But I also fulfill the requirements of the state's permit to carry. So it also helps people get that, and they can get the certificate. And I don't know if you know this. Do you know who I have as my guest tomorrow on my show?
No.
Scott Horton.
Oh,
So we'll be really getting in deep. Scott's a genius when it comes to foreign policy. Great anti-war guy. Helps run antiwar.com with Dave DeCamp. He's actually speaking at the Libertarian Party of Minnesota in Owatonna on Saturday. He's the headliner. I'm speaking right before him. So we're going to talk tomorrow on the show at 1:00, and then I'll be giving hopefully a really good speech leading up to his. We'll talk a little bit about how we defeated COVID tyranny in the state of Minnesota against Tim Walz. So that's in Owatonna. I think it's at like the Baymont Inn or something like that.
How do people find your conceal carry class?
Oh, go to EliteGuardianMN.com. MN as in Minnesota, the abbreviation. EliteGuardianMN.com.
Yeah, highly recommend that. I'm sure it's a great class.
Yeah,
well,
Jake,
Gunner's been doing it.
Yeah, Jake just celebrated his 300th episode of The Truth Hurts. I mean, he's been grinding away and doing this. He's been putting out amazing content, really forming the discourse in Minnesota politics. I've had my carry permit for quite some time in Minnesota. You have to renew every 5 years. Jake was the third class that I've taken, and it's easily the best. I'm not just saying that it is. So if you want to take a course, please do sign up with Jake. And then, yeah, he's going to be speaking with Scott Horton tomorrow, and then in person in Owatonna on Saturday, right?
Yeah, you want to go drive down there with me, Gunner?
Oh, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, honestly, I thought about it. Owatonna what, like an hour away?
Yeah, it's like an hour for us. Like Gunner and I live like 2
Okay.
miles apart. I used to live even
Right.
closer to Mark than I did
Yeah.
Gunner. But
If you're
Mark had to
rolling
move.
solo, let me talk to the wife and we'll chat about it.
All right, cool, man.
Well, all right. I think that is a wrap. Then we'll have you back on, Jake. This has been great. We've been meaning to do this for a long time, but do check out Jake's show, The Truth Hurts, on YouTube. Elite Guardian MN for concealed carry class. Thanks for tuning in to the Truth Expedition. Do not tread on us and do not shed on us.
Thanks, everyone.